Hi, dear listeners, and welcome back to Blush and Bloom, the podcast where we talk about women's health, self care, and everything in between. I'm your host, Gigi, founder of Asale, your space for cycle aware and preventive care. I'm really glad you're here with me on this journey to unpack women's health and highlight the incredible things being built in this space. So let's get into today's episode. Okay. Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much for joining me again on Blush and Bloom. So it's been awesome. The last episode we had together was incredible, and I'm grateful that you're able to do this recording with me again. So let's say somebody hasn't listened to the previous episode we did together. How would you introduce yourself and the work that you do?
First of all, let me thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about not only me, my activism, but also about my foundation. In fact, I'm an economist, I'm an activist, founded Global Thinking Foundation in 2016, so 10 years ago, working to empower women and girls through financial literacy and digital literacy to prevent economic violence and financial abuse. And after more than 35 years of a career in international finance, for me now the commitment is related to the development of project and dissemination of the social impact for the project related to economic violence and prevention.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And you're doing such amazing work. So you wear so many hats. You're an economist, you're an activist, you're a founder, you're an advisor. How do all these things come together in your day-to-day work?
Allow me to say that my banking career gave me the opportunity to improve my knowledge not only on financial markets but on the geopolitical and social dynamics related to the development, the world development, and more in general to the fact that the financial flows finally they are supporting the global goals of the Agenda 2000 and give me the idea to develop the project of my foundation and also to have a specific focus on financial inclusion of women and girls into emerging markets was another great experience to be more deeply involved into the social and political dynamics of these countries.
Okay, that's such incredible work. And let's talk a bit more about your foundation itself. So you're the founder of Global Thinking Foundation. What was your vision when you founded it, and how has it grown since then?
I started to look into the international treaty like the Istanbul Convention, where the four types of gender violence, so economic violence, psychological violence, sexual violence, and physical violence, are described in order to build a specific language and commitment of every country's signing into this international treaty to be more keen in norms and laws to sanctionate and to define this kind of crime. And I saw that the economic independence keeps women trapped in abuse and deprive them for the human rights that are linked to the way women are participating to the society, a specific and fundamental and having specific and fundamental role into the society, not only for development, but in terms of caregiving. If you think that the care economy measured by the ILO is more than $11 trillion, so 9% of the global GDP. So for this reason, I think that the role of women into the world development is crucial, and the working participation of women without any violence to be submitted is an important goal.
I agree 100%. You're doing such incredible work. And you work across Italy, Belgium, France. What impact have you seen at the community level when women gain in financial literacy and autonomy?
What we have observed and seen also, because we are providing a social impact measurement from the qualitative and quantitative ways, we have seen that educated women are able not only to protect families, communities, and the future of the person that are sharing with them an economic and well-being path for their own private life, but also the financial skills that they are developing are absolutely the foundation for them in terms of resilience and autonomy, and this a kind of autodetermination that it also guarantee to act freely and independent, to make some choice, and to be aware of their rights, and to make choice that from the economic and financial point of view are fundamental for the sustainability of their personal life.
I agree. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing, and I hope it spreads to more places as well. So, could you please share a story from your foundation's work? I think you shared in the last episode that we did together, but an example basically that captures why this mission is so important for you. And
But for
also,
example, I was thinking about a young lady of 25 years that after a period of big love with her fiance, finally after 2 years and a loans for a house signed together, discovered that it was just decided to leave the house, and so the problem of the financial stress that starting to improve the anxiety and depression in this girl that was now facing a different situation, and means to me that it's very difficult for such a young girls to share between love and money. And the way that you are committed for more than 30 years in a loans, and love normally from the statistical point of view doesn't fit with the same period or duration of a home loan. And so you have to think about that, to give a guarantee, to share a guarantee to a bank for a common goal to live together is a wonderful thing, but you have to keep it into the reality that love sometimes doesn't fit with the home loans, and so you have to face problem with the bank to sell the house, and you are in a situation of such a
stress.
financial distress because you have to find another flat, you have a note regarding your credit score that
Mhm.
penalize your opportunity to obtain credit, to obtain a credit card. So you are excluded from the financial point of view due to the fact that you make a choice only with your heart and not with your head, and keeping in the reality the fact that some financial choices are very important for your life more than some love choices.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that example. A lot to think about, especially as women, before we go into financial commitments, be able to protect ourselves and also our partner before being able to make this kind of decisions. Okay, so you've worked directly with women facing economic violence. And I think economic violence hasn't been talked about enough, because when we're discussing concepts of abuse, it's usually from the physical, and not even emotional doesn't even get that much attention as it should, but it's mostly from a physical and sexual abuse point of view. So for somebody who may not understand what economic abuse is, how does it show up in terms of their mental and physical health? Like, how can somebody spot that they're being economically abused?
First of all, looking at our model of governance and the base of our project, everything starts by economic violence or a financial problem into the couple, or the sharing a path of life together. The control of money, the denial of access of the money, or the force of debts keep this control, coercive control, in a sort of asymmetry of relationship between two people.
Mhm.
And these started to be and become an exclusion from financial decision, and we move to a care to control. This way, to lose your independence and to lose your freedom is also the way you are not able to share important decisions, like to have an insurance, to have a plan for your retirement, And if you think that perhaps, for example, in Italy, 46% of women doesn't have any insurance policy for your health. So that's the main problem, because clearly the financial stress is directly linked to mental health, physical health, and you need to keep attention regarding your financial health as a whole.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have a follow-up question to that. So many people imagine that financial abuse is mostly about the money. And you already touched about this, how it goes beyond just the money. It leads to not having access to insurance, for example. So what are more deeper consequences you witness in women's lives when they're being economically abused?
But there are two kind of situation that we can face or observe. First of all, there is a problem related to cyber violence and addiction, like gaming and gambling, speculative trading, compulsive shopping. These are behavioral problem that's starting from the fact that you are in a distress situation and you are trying to find easy solution to
Mhm.
make money. And so you move to a difficult situation to a worse situation
Mhm.
due to this addiction that become to be ludopathy. Another problem is related to the fact that when you sign a guarantee or a contract without keep an eye on this contract and without being aware of the consequences to give your personal guarantee, obviously you keep a big question mark on your future from the economic point of view. Also, when you are starting in a new job, and you have to keep your mental health strong to face a new situation or to work with an opportunity to keep the new goals in your career. But if you are disturbed by a familiar situation due to the money, obviously you are risking of losing an opportunity also to strengthen into your career and job situation.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective on this. And let's say there is a woman who's listening to this podcast that has just learned about economic abuse. How can she take ownership of her life and rebuild not just her finances, but also her confidence and well being?
But first of all, I think that the first step of empowerment, financial empowerment for women, is to make a simple use regarding, first of all, the familiar budget, the personal budget. For example, we have observed that more than 33% of women, they are not used to finalize a budget or a plan in the medium and long term. And the fact of lack of skill or to delegate someone else to make
Mhm.
choices for you is obviously a big problem. So
Mhm.
we have to step by step moving to build your confidence, and because build your confidence, it builds your freedom. So
Mhm.
for this reason, you have to take care of yourself, starting from your personal budget and moving into the knowledge of the basic skills of financial education.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I agree 100% financial education is important for everyone, especially women, because they tend to be in this more likely to be in situations like this, which is quite unfortunate. And I'm happy that people like you are working in this space to support more women to have more ownership and have more autonomy over how they are able to live and their financial resources. So, okay, so let's talk a bit more about your work with the G7. So you've represented women's issues at the G7 and W7 and other international forums, which is incredible work. So what is it like to carry these conversations and the stories of these women into global conversations? Like, how has it been for you so far?
You know, first of all, we hosted the presence of many young activists to our Summit for Women 7 during the Italian G7. And
Mhm.
also, we work hardly with the other co president of Women 7, that is the group of civil society for G7, in order to finalize a communique on the main topics that see the fil rouge between women empowerment, labor participation and the reducing of the social cost of violence against women and girls. And one of the main point of remark that I want to outline is the fact that we add the gender certification for companies. That is an important step towards a common social responsibility for companies regarding workers and to recognize in the gender balance specific actions and decision in terms of well-being for workers and related to women health. So to customize the welfare, the company welfare, more specifically taking in consideration not only the role of caregiver of women, but also their need to support their families.
Okay, thank you so much. And I love that how you were able to tie in how this entire conversation is very relevant to women's health because, of course, if women aren't able to have financial autonomy, they won't be able to access healthcare. And then you're also part of the people who are pushing for legislation to be able for women to be able to have more rights at work and be more comfortable being able to live in today's world. So you're doing such amazing work. So let's talk a bit more about how do you speak to policymakers and world leaders, and what arguments do you usually push that helps them really listen to what you're about to say that make them listen to your points on women's financial autonomy?
So first of all, the foundation participate to the national table of different institution, government institution and market institution related to the financial health and women policies with the regions at the local level. At the same time, we are affiliate member of the International Network for Financial Education of the OECD, and we actively participate to the working group of the IMF and World Bank and to the working group of the NGO CSW, the Commission of State of Women of the United Nations. Why we have this kind of commitment to participate at international level is because the only way to exchange best practices in specific project, to enlarge the opportunity of new rules in edutainment, to be more effective in schools and with the citizens, and at the same time to reciprocate the experience acted in different countries and to see the results that other association or foundation are able to obtain in a better or efficient way. So I think it's very important to go out of our physical borders of our personal country and to be open to a debate with the other countries' experience, particularly is related to filling the gaps on gender discrimination and gender gaps more in general, from health, pay gap, and today is the day of the equal pay gap, and that's a very important day to make remarks on the importance of equity rights for women.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, let's move away from the G7 work that you do and move towards more of your background in fintech. So you're active in fintech and digital innovation spaces. So how can technology be better designed to protect women from financial abuse and support and empower them?
First of all, we have different kind of tools. First of
Mhm.
all, tools for managing the urgency to prevent from any specific attack or fraud. At the same time, thanks to the technology, there are two very important fields of technology application out from the fintech, that is the technology applied to the financial services for financial inclusion, and I'm referring to femtech and longevitech. So first of all the digital tools linked to menstrual health, menopause, fertility, well-being, and to the financial health more in general in order to prevention and reduces the medical cost. So tech aligns care, dignity, and independence for women, and not only the health apps that are mentioning the fewer sick days or better prevention, but also the way you can link to the improvement of access to insurance and workplace welfare through the skills that we acquire from this app, improve and supports the women participation in the workforce first of all. And really, when I speak about femtech, I'm speaking about acting on economic equity for women.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing like more further how these tools are meant to tie into this. Because as you said, it's not just about being able to track fertility and periods and everything, but also to be able to have financial literacy and and better understanding of how these things work. Because I think I agree 100% that all these things are connected and they should be, because I mean, you can't afford to pay for a period care app or any app or femtech app whatsoever if you're not in a financially stable situation. So I agree that these two things should not be mutually exclusive. They should be combined. So thank you so much for highlighting that. What's one innovation that you're excited about that you think could change things for women's financial health?
I think that the fact that in October 2024, United Nations established a new department for financial health, led by Queen Maxima, is a very important step to mention that a new measurement of the ranking of financial health of the people in each country is important to make a confrontation of new rules and norms for improving the financial inclusion and the tools for financial health as well. We have mentioned, for example, before the digital addiction like compulsive trading, gaming, and cyberbullying. And I think that to improve all the opportunity to guarantee the people that are facing this kind of disease is an important step to set boundaries between the digital hygiene and the privacy of the people. So using apps, as we have mentioned, to respect the well-being, working on the big data, but just to give back a result of how we can obtain a social impact, improving the social and financial inclusion of people.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that, and let's see how things go. All right. So we are headed towards the end of the podcast now, so I have a few more questions for you left. So, what keeps you personally motivated to keep pushing for change even when progress seems slow?
For sure, the results that we obtain into schools, meeting students, discussing and debating with them using different kind of tools like video, documentary, sort of also gamification, on budget, on cybersecurity, changing the way to communicate with students. We obtain attention and not distraction from mobile phone, but attention on their personal rights, and also their way to rebuild a relationship with the other people that is not only filtered by the mobile. And regarding adults, the courses of financial literacy and digital literacy are very important for women that want to approach the job market or be re-included from the social point of view, or they are escaping or take distance from dysfunctional familiar situation. So from these results, I keep the energy and the commitment to go beyond that and improve the solution that we offer in order to, first of all, policy to recognize the economic violence and gender sensitive welfare for workers.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, my next question is, if you could change one law or policy tomorrow to better protect women from economic violence, what would it be?
First of all, to impose the personal banking account to everybody. because I think that is a very good idea is in terms of respect and dignity to share a banking account with friends, with a partner, but to have their own personal account is the most important rule of safety, to take your own responsibility first of all on your own and to respect yourself.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. What are your thoughts on people who prefer to have the joint account and then their own personal accounts? So maybe the joint account can be for home expenses. Like, do you think that's still worth keeping, or is just best for each person to have their own account and take responsibility?
My suggestion is to have both, but starting from your personal account make the difference for your future.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And okay, so let's say there is a young woman who's listening to this podcast, because of course that's the audience for the most part. So, and they don't see themselves as a financial expert just yet. What's one step that they can take today to begin improving their financial well-being?
First of all, to think about money not as a treat, not as something to delegate to someone else, but money is really empowering people and give the and sign the line between to have your personal financial freedom or to be dependent from someone else. So I think to taking care of yourself from this point of view is a very important achievement.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And finally, for people who want to learn more about you and your foundation and all the work that you do, where can they learn more about you?
You can approach directly our site, www.gltfoundation.com, and you can find in French, Italian, and English different kind of tools and platform with contents, podcast, and also publication, glossary, words of economic and finance with more than 200 words really detailed and that offer the opportunity to build more skills and also to navigate into the different platform from the publication on cryptos towards the most important insurance video clip.
Okay, thank you so much. I will include the links in the description and in the show notes for this episode. And for the listeners, in case you didn't know, this is a follow-up episode because there is issues with the video, the last episode. So the last episode is also available if you want to learn more about Claudia. And thank you so much, Claudia, for agreeing to re-record the episode again. It's been wonderful speaking to you, and you're doing such incredible work.
Yeah, it's a real honor. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak about the Global Thinking Foundation and our commitment to prevent economic violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Hi again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Blush and Bloom. I'm so glad you joined me for this conversation. If you found it helpful, please share this episode with a friend or someone who might need it. Let's keep talking about women's health and working towards better outcomes for all of us. You can find more episodes and resources at www.asale.tech and check out our app at www.asale.health. And you can follow us for more updates on Instagram at asale.tech. Until next time, I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and bye-bye.